Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds in action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. Penn State wins its first round contest in the 2024 college football playoff, the first ever 12-team college football playoff. Penn State defeats SMU at home by a score of 38-10. Early on in the playoffs here, Justin, blowouts. Notre Dame, even though not on the scoreboard necessarily, really controlled things against Indiana on Friday night, and then to begin things on Saturday afternoon. Still two more games to come, but still Penn State handled SMU. Overall, what did you see from this game? What do you think was your big takeaway ultimately from Penn State?
I mean, size and speed really comes in handy, right? I think that's the main thing, especially when you start playing in the cold weather. And that's what you're leaning on. I think when taking care of the line of scrimmage and being able to control that, cross some turnovers, score on some turnovers that, jumpstart the whole thing. And then just playing sound football across the board. And then when you have a talent advantage from that standpoint, it's hard to come back from that. So, I mean, it was great first win of the college football playoffs. The new era is officially here. And so it was cool to see.
Penn State is now going to advance to the Fiesta Bowl. That's on New Year's Eve in Phoenix, Arizona. Penn State will play Boise State, the 4 seed, the winners of the Mountain West Conference. So Penn State continues on what many have called the easiest path to the semifinals, at least in this year's college football playoff. So that matchup we're going to talk about in the weeks to come. We're very excited about that one. I think Ashton Jeanty and company present a greater challenge than SMU. Focusing on this game individually, I think you have to start with the Penn State defense up against SMU's offense, because this was the whole story, Justin. Like, literally, it felt like the entire scoring scheme for Penn State was going to be just pick sixes. I mean, Dom DeLuca, Tony Rojas, 2 huge returns for touchdowns, and overall 3 takeaways from Kevin Jennings, who just never looked comfortable in this game. Huge credit to Tom Allen, huge credit to the defensive line. Abdul Carter and Dennis Sutton just ate the lunch of the SMU offensive line. Kevin Jennings never had a chance to be comfortable, made a lot of mistakes. What did you see from the defense? How'd you feel about this performance?
I mean, you got to feel great about it, man. You hold them to 3 points for most of the game, come out with 10. It's a pretty high octane offense. And yeah, I mean, they stopped the run, so they're able getting a chance to go after the passer, right? And so to be able to see Abdul and his habitat doing his thing, and those guys saying, making some plays and getting pressure up the middle, those are the type of performances you need, regardless of the opponent in the college football playoffs, to get ready for that next round.
Watching Penn State's defensive line play today, especially, and then we've seen them evolve and get better as the year has gone on. Where do you put them amongst the teams that remain now in the 12-team college football playoff? Is this the best defensive line in college football?
I don't know about the best, but I think they're definitely formidable in that top 5, probably. I haven't studied every single team, but yeah, I would say they're comfortably in that top 5. Definitely one of the stronger defensive lines, especially when there's a score deficit and we can pin our ears back and go after the quarterback.
Watching this game, Penn State's defense especially, did you see anything different from Tom Allen in this game, or little wrinkles that he threw into this that you liked, pressures that he brought, the coverages that were thrown out there?
No, not really. Not really. Just a little mixture of everything we've seen throughout the season and just execution. At the end of the day, the call is just step one. It's the execution that really, brings it all together. And I think the guys were flying around, whether it's cold or not, hitting people and making SMU really feel something about it.
The crowd was a great the crowd was just great for this game. It was so interesting. I don't know if you saw it on social media in the lead up to this game, people saying that there were inexpensive tickets to be had to this game, that there weren't going to be that many people actually attending the game by Penn State standards, and they still put 106,013 people in the building in what felt like 13-degree weather, apparently, according to the broadcast, and 35-mile-per-hour winds. Like, great environment, great atmosphere for Penn State football. The whiteout looked spectacular in that environment. It just felt like all the belly aching that you can hear nationally and even locally sometimes about like what this was supposed to be, what it could have been. It was perfect for Penn State football. Like, I don't know what more you would ask for if you're a Nittany Lion fan, other than it be warmer.
I'll say some heaters and indoor. I think I can ask for a lot of things when it's 25 degrees and the windshield feels like
Right.
10. But I mean, it's pretty cool, right? Like that. The We Are North type situation, the all white. They wore the homecoming uniforms as well.
The Generations of Greatness uniforms.
Yeah,
those were cool. That was a nice
piece.
piece.
So that's pretty cool picture in the first ever college football playoff. But I mean, it was a cool scene to be had at Penn State, and to come out with a blowout victory is really what we want.
Coming back to the defensive performance for Penn State, Kevin Jennings is held to 20 of 36 for 195 yards. A late touchdown there in mop-up duty, but 3 interceptions, 56% completion percentage. His backup eventually came in there late in the fourth quarter. Penn State's backup quarterback, Ethan Grunkemeyer, we got to look at, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. Penn State held SMU to 1.6 yards per carry. That's just outstanding. The entire game was put on Kevin Jennings and this receiving core. To me, Justin, it just looked like SMU has some athletes, but they don't have anybody that really scares probably Big Ten or SEC level of defenses and talent. What did you see?
I mean, from the size standpoint up front, that was the disadvantage for SMU. I think Penn State was able to take advantage of that. And once we got to the outside, I think we just have superior athletes. You've seen it on screen passes when the corners are making plays. You kind of seen it on the offensive side of the football. But I mean, being able to take advantage of the front seven on both sides of the ball really gives you an advantage of controlling the rest of the game.
Penn State's linebackers also thought they did an excellent job in this game. And you and I have been talking about it a good amount. Is this the greatest linebacker core Penn State has ever assembled? No, but still, the way that they have stepped forward as the year has gone on, I thought Kobe King had a very strong game. Tony Rojas, obviously, Dom DeLuca, all those guys got involved. I think he's just a good matchup for this defensive, this group of linebackers altogether for Penn State. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, they have SMU, and like that's a very productive offense. Like, that's a good running back, and they came ready to play. And again, once you take care of the line of scrimmage and you have the linebackers being able to run around and make plays the way that they need to, it gives them the advantage. They got some pretty athletic, physical guys back there between Kobe, Abdul, and Rojas. And I'm taking that matchup a lot of times, especially when we have the defensive line advantage as well.
Overall, SMU 253 total yards of offense, 7 penalties for 62 yards slowed them up. They were 3 of 14 on third down, thanks to Penn State's defense. There were several instances in this game, Justin, where Penn State had red zone stands that either were held to the field goal, or Abdul Carter comes up with a huge third down sack to completely change the play call for SMU to attempting a field goal that was ultimately missed. The late touchdown makes it 10 points overall for the Mustangs, but just so many instances where this defense was either making Kevin Jennings run for his life, collapsing this offensive line, and then even if things were, a little bit dangerous there in the red zone, just kind of like you saw in the opening drive, it was bend but don't break, and even still, it was just the right guys coming up with the right plays at the right time to make sure that they kept SMU at bay. And credit to SMU, the way that they play it's a fast pace. You do have to be able to keep up with them in terms of how they're going to throw the ball all over the field and use every piece of real estate there. But I was so impressed by Penn State's defense. I do think the wind, the weather, the cold, all that stuff, certainly a factor in this game. It just seemed like on both sides, Penn State and SMU, Justin, I don't know how you feel, it made the passing game that much harder, certainly because of the wind, but then also just dropping back to pass, the footing, they said it was kind of a solid ground, those sorts of things, like a couple factors that could have played into this.
I mean, sure. I think the biggest thing is 15, 20 degrees outside, right? Just the guys moving around and moving from that standpoint. But other than that, it was a football game.
It was a good football game, if you're a Penn State fan, that is. Speaking of football, and this is something that's very important to Justin and I, we want to send you this message about Future Fans Sports. Future Fans is a new brand that helps little kids become big sports fans through storybook-led activity boxes that help them understand a sport, namely football. Helps you introduce the core concepts of a sport in ways that make sense to a kid. For example, instead of explaining something like the downs of football directly, which is hard enough explaining to a full-grown adult who may not know anything about the game, try explaining the downs to a little kid. With Future Fans, this game is that there's a beanbag toss game that has 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it so that later the storybook connects that to football. This is genius, Justin. This was created by dads, and I know that you can relate as a parent, having the opportunity to communicate a sport that you love to kids. It's so important, and it's a nice thing that Future Fans is able to do.
It's a great thing, especially when you empower the next generation of fans, especially, and when we talk about around the holidays, with Christmas coming around and the NFL taking over that holiday, it's good for like daddy and daughter time for them to understand. Like, it's one thing for dads to want to watch the game with their daughters, but if they don't understand what's going on, there's no interest. So like the more they understand the concepts and the context that the guys are trying to accomplish, the more they'll be interested, and they can spend time like we always want to do around the holiday season. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, right around the corner. So if you're looking for a last-minute gift, Future Fans Sports, it's only $49.99 at futurefans.com. But if you use our promo code Penn State, all one word, PENNSTATE, you'll get 15% off. That's futurefans.com, code Penn State, all one word, PENNSTATE. And you can unlock a lifetime of memories around sports this holiday season with Future Fans. Talking about Penn State's offense now up against SMU's defense. Listen, I'll give credit. This is a good SMU defensive line, and that they did cause some trouble for Penn State's offensive line. The blitz was there for SMU. Ultimately, we're able to walk away with 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Penn State's defensive line, 3 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. So Kevin Jennings was holding the ball way too long. But anyways, Penn State's offense up against SMU's defense. I personally love that from the opening salvo, Andy Kotelnicki and company were committed to running the football for most of this game. And then the odd thing about this is that there was a point late in the third quarter where Penn State had more pass attempts than rushing attempts. It just didn't necessarily feel like it. I think the weather was certainly an element for Drew Aller to be able to throw the ball. We'll get to Drew, but what did you see out of the running game that maybe it's felt different, or did it feel like this was a continuation of the performance that we saw against Oregon?
A little bit of a continuation of the performance, but I mean, they took care of the line of scrimmage, or just from a girth standpoint, they had the advantage, but they took advantage of their advantage of being bigger and faster, right? And I think that's what we just seen. Like, there were just nice holes. Again, we talk about when you engage that first defender happening further down the field, and guys are able to get steam, make the moves they need to make, and I think that's what we saw from both guys today.
It felt really good from Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Overall, Penn State's 6 ball carriers, 40 carries for 189 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, a long of 25, and an average of 4.7 yards per carry. Namely, Nick Singleton, 14 rushing attempts for 90 yards and a touchdown, a long of 18. 6.4 was his average. The same for Katron Allen, who went for 11 carries for 70 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. I thought this was going to be a game where Katron Allen was a bigger factor hitting SMU between the tackles, but the way that we saw how but the way that we saw SMU's defensive line play, they were able to bottle up a good amount of things in the interior, and ultimately it just provided alleys to the outside for Nick Singleton and Katron Allen to really take advantage in that respect. I think you put it perfectly. Penn State's offensive line controlled the line of scrimmage through this entire game. Hats off to Katron Allen, also contributing 2 catches for 28 yards. Nick Singleton, 2 for 7. So you see the diverse ways that Andy Kotelnicki was able to get them involved. I think one thing that's interesting to take away from this game is that kind of a quieter game from Tyler Warren. What do you attribute that to?
I mean, everybody else getting their wheels going. I think. I mean, if you don't have to feed, your Thanos type of situation, you can find other people to get the ball in their hands, and it keeps a rhythm in the offense. It just shows that it's not a force feeding situation. It's like, he's the best option. He'll be the best option, but we have other weapons to use as well.
Warren finished the day with 4 catches for 33 yards. He was targeted 6 times in the passing game, long of 15, 18 yards after the catch. Very impressive. Tyler Warren also one carry for 6 yards, and then one ill-fated pass attempt that was a rocket to Nick Singleton that looked like it bounced off his hip. So just kind of one of those situations where it's like, yeah, he was a quarterback, but he's more of a tight end now. So a little touch on those passes in the future. But I think it was interesting in that you could see the way SMU was scheming for Tyler Warren. However, the running game was so potent for Penn State that, to your point, it just opened up everything, and it just wasn't really a need to empty the playbook, so to speak. I mentioned Drew Aller. I saw some people on social media kind of going after Drew for maybe not the best game or not the cleanest game altogether. 13 of 22, 127 yards passing, 59% completion percentage. And let's see, Drew Aller, 7 carries for 10 yards, obviously went down with 3 sacks through this game, but I don't necessarily put too much of that on him. There were a couple of different instances where they sent pressure and he just didn't have a ton of time, and other instances where he did have time, he was able to elongate plays. Some decisions here and there, I think you could point out and be like, oh, yeah, this wasn't perfect for Drew, but I challenge you to play in 13-degree weather and 35-mile-per-hour winds and try and throw a football in a straight line. So that was kind of, not to completely apologize for everything. I don't think Drew would look at it either and say this is my best game either. But what did you think of the passing game as a whole?
You just mentioned the obvious, right? Let's not circumvent that to make a bigger deal out of something that isn't a big deal. It was cold, and like you said, it's windy, but I think he managed the game well, and they had 38 points in a very one-sided victory. There's not much to it.
Yeah. This was very one-sided, and it drew up a lot of conversations, Justin, of the first round so far. We still have 2 more games yet to be played today at the time that we're recording this within the first round matchups, but Indiana just did not look like it was a team that could credibly hang with the big boys of college football. SMU, the runner-up in the ACC, I think you can make that exact same argument. And I feel like there's this discussion in college football is that, especially with the playoff now, in the 12-team playoff, it's people saying they want the most deserving teams in terms of, do you win your games? Strength of schedule, strength of your performance. How much did you score? All those things that are important. But then also we want to have this separate argument about who did you play and are you capable of beating these teams? Because I think the eye test would tell you, yeah, SMU, Indiana, I don't think they can beat freaking Oregon, for instance, if they're what we're all calling the best team in college football at this point. That's up for debate. But what we keep moving the goalposts on this, like, oh, well, Indiana won the games they're supposed to win, and SMU won all the games they're supposed to win, and they competed here and they competed here. But it's like, I can see with my freaking eyes that this team isn't better than this team and isn't going to give this team a run for its money. It feels like it's created this conversation that I'm like, I don't know how they get a handle on this amorphous blob.
I don't know if you do. Right? To be completely honest, I don't know. I don't really know if you do. It's like that first round thing, and it's the first year going through it. So I think there's going to always be some, I don't say hiccups, but you're always, anytime you try to chase ghosts or run away from problems, right? There's okay, we don't want to de-emphasize the championship game. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. And we have all these different things where we put situations in place on bye weeks and just like rank the first top guys or lessen the amount of teams that are in the actual playoff. But
they're not going to do the latter.
No, but like anything in NCAA, like everything is like the rules are up to interpretation. Obviously, this isn't the NCAA, but it takes time when rules are up to interpretation for them to come out and for people to see like, okay, this is wrong. Let's change it. We had the BCS era. We had the vote one in. We had the playoff. Like we've gone through different eras of trying to get the best teams in, right? So this is just the first go at the new one. So I'm a little patient on that. But I think to clear it up, you do have to take somewhat of the eye test into account when you're judging how good teams are. I think we've learned that over just the history of college sports. The question is now is just, how much control do the teams have of creating their schedules, like their non-conference schedules and things of that nature, if we're going to make this thing one unified, quote unquote, professional football league. Because the key thing about the NFL is that is parity is number one, right? Like there is no, hey, 40-point blowouts in first week of the playoffs most of the time, but well, do you understand what I'm saying? But
I understand what you're saying. And then here's the counter I have to people who are complaining. Like everybody's complaining about the blowouts. It's every other professional sports league has blowouts in the playoffs, but we accept that these teams are even because it's only a small sample size. It's 32 teams in the NFL, for instance. And it's like, hey, these teams that do make the playoffs are the upper echelon. And even if there's a team that gets blown out, it's like, man, that team's just clearly better, but all of them deserve to be here. The bedrock of the issue is that some people believe some of the teams deserve to be here and some of them don't. So there's no argument with that in professional sports. All of those teams that are in there deserve to be in it just based on the mathematics of them being entered into the playoff. That's the issue with college football, is that it's so many different variables and 160 plus teams, all these different leagues. It's like you could even look within Penn State's own conference in the SEC of like, you beat Purdue and you beat Northwestern, you beat the bottom half of the conference. If you're looking at Indiana's schedule, I'm not trying to pick on them, but it's like Penn State's had the similar problem for years where it's like, you beat the bad teams in the Big Ten, but do you beat the good teams in the conference and beyond it? So right. It's I think it's fascinating. Like we're getting hung up on blowouts, and like these happen everywhere in other playoffs, but for some reason, this is like the end of the world that it happens in college football.
I mean, because every team or ecosystem of school feels like they should be in there, right? Like you hear a lot of the rumblings coming from Ole Miss or coming from Miami, where they feel like there was a problem with the selection at the beginning of the whole situation. Same thing when UCF went undefeated and they were like calling themselves national champions.
Right.
None of this is new, right? So you just got to kind of deal with what we know and try to make some adjustments. Florida State, look at them. I think the committee got it right last year with them. They left them out, and you see there's a farce of a situation down there too.
I think the whole circumstance is fascinating, and then we'll see how these other two games play out this Saturday, and then as the rest of the field goes on, people will long forget about the first round, and we'll have the same argument next year, and all these people are talking about, all right, what about Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina? I'd even throw Illinois in the mix in terms of, hey, these schools that could have been more credible competition for anybody in the first round, but the decision's been made, and here we are. To wrap this up, now Penn State will have to deal with Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. At first blush, how do you feel about that matchup?
Which one? I missed you for a second.
Penn State now will move on to play Boise State in the next round of the college football playoff, the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix. That's going to be on New Year's Eve. So about 10 days to get ready for that holiday with your families, back to practicing. A lot is going to go into this. By the way, the transfer portal window is still open. There's still a ton happening, but just kind of at first glance, how do you feel about Penn State versus Boise State?
Feel good. Feel really good about it. I think taking care of the line of scrimmage like we did today, and you kind of neutralize their special weapon that I think has been the driving force of their success this year. And we kind of have a similar type of victory.
We're looking forward to it. Everybody enjoy your holidays. We will be back on Wednesday with an episode that we will not be taping on Christmas. Don't worry. We will get you what we always deliver on Wednesdays. So we're looking forward to that. Have a wonderful holiday. Happy New Year to everybody. Penn State advances in the college football playoff by virtue of a 38-10 victory against SMU. Up next, it's the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State versus Boise State. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.